Oh, what's up, GameLeapers? This is Coach Cheeks, or the JIZZ, and in today's upload, we're going to be talking about the 12.5 tier list and the tiers for every single role next patch, given the changes that were released by the Riot devs today on Twitter. And these changes, there aren't that many, but they are certainly going to be impactful, so we're here to reveal and give you all the information you need on the champions for 12.5. And of course, if you want to master any of these champions, make sure you check out the GameLeap website in the description and comment section. Unlike our competitors, we upload daily, fresh, original content. We don't just recycle our YouTube videos, so get that exclusive access to all of that challenger tier content by signing up, and let's get into the tier list. So we're going to start by talking about the top lane tier list, and before we get into the champions that you can see, the big system nerf that's coming into 12.5, we have to address first. So Hullbreaker at the moment is being picked a lot by top laners, because it is a massive stat stick item, and is so worth it for the gold you're paying, because it's giving you so much power in the split push, and because of the teleport changes at the start of the season, Hullbreaker is even more valuable. So Riot are targeting this in 12.5, so the actual self-resist you get when you're split pushing, these are down for ranged champions, cut in half. But for melees, they're staying the same, which is nice. And this is the same with the minion nerf as well. So the minions resistances, when you're near them and split pushing, these are actually down for ranged champions as well. So if you're playing someone like Graves, Akshan, Urgot, Quinn, ranged champions in the top lane building Hullbreaker, this is certainly going to be a bit of a jab to you, but the item is still going to be good. Now let's get into the actual tier list and talk about the big changes in the meta for 12.5. Now in the broken tier, not much has really changed. Riven, Fiora are still here, but we do have two new additions. One of these is Trundle, because Hullbreaker is going to stay the same for melee champions, and Trundle with this item is just way too broken. He's one of the best solo carry top laners in the game, and one of the best split pushers, so this just really suits him. So 12.5 will be just as good for Trundle. And we also have Tryndamere here, because this champion, I don't know if he loses any lane at the moment, because of the ultimate sustain Q-Max build, because you can never really be pushed out of lane, and if the enemy champion does misstep just once, Tryndamere is such a good champion at punishing his opponent's mistakes, so Trynd makes it into the broken tier. Now if we move on to the S tier quickly, you can see that Akshan is in here, Quinn is in here. These are ranged champions who build Hullbreaker, no? So how do they make the list? Well, these two champions don't rely on Hullbreaker that much, because their kits are just a bit too overpowered regardless of the items they actually build for the top lane. Being ranged champions, having poke, harass, and also disengage, it makes them very annoying to play against. So these two remain, and you can also see lots of champions in the S tier like Darius, Garen, Illaoi, Jax, and Yorick of course, who will still build Hullbreaker. This is the main reason they're staying in S tier, because it's not changing for the melee champions. And also in S tier we have Nico making her way in, and also Rumble. These two champions, because they got buffed last patch, have actually seen a lot more play in the top lane and a lot of success as well. So this is why they're here. But one champion who is going to fall off a little bit in 12.5 is Urgot, who we mentioned before, because Hullbreaker is affecting ranged champions, and Urgot is classified as a ranged champion, so Urgot is down in B tier. This might mean you have to rush Titanic again and then go Cleaver and Frostfire, which still probably isn't that bad, but it's not Hullbreaker. Other bruisers and fighters will be building this, so Urgot is kind of left out in the cold a bit. But one interesting addition into the underrated tier you can see, we've got Gnar, Karma, Lee Sin, and Vayne, and we'll go into detail into why these other champions are here in our underrated 12.5 video. But at the moment, it's important to mention Samira, because she's getting 3 buffs for 12.5, so her HP per level, this is up by 6, so at level 18, she's going to be getting a lot more HP. This is really good for her scaling, and also her armor per level is up by half. This is really nice for the top lane in particular, and again, just like the HP buff means that the later the game goes, she's going to be even stronger. And the last buff for Samira is that your ultimate's cooldown is down to 5 seconds. Remember, this does not cost any mana anymore, so Samira makes it into the top lane tier list for the first time this season because of these buffs. And the other champion related to the top lane who's getting buffed is Kennen. So the 4th auto attack in your W when it's charged up, the base damage is up by 15 at each rank, and it's going to scale more of your bonus AD and AP now. So this is really nice, because it is actually kind of an important poke and harass tool, but is it going to be that meaningful? Probably not, because Kennen in the Hullbreaker meta at the moment can't really stand up to these other champions, but certainly a nice improvement. Now the other top laner we have to talk about who's getting changed, this is Gwen in 12.5, and the nerf that's affecting top lane Gwen is that her E's bonus attack range is down by 50. And this is going to be important because in the early game in particular, the extra attack range is super busted. It means that lots of melee champions who you beat anyway cannot retaliate because they don't have the range you do. So this is certainly a healthy change, I think, for the game in general, but Gwen mains of course won't be happy about it, and this is why Gwen has dropped down from S tier into the A tier. Still playable, but now let's head to the mid lane, guys, and talk about the 12.5 tier list for these bad boys. And there's been a few changes to this tier list since last patch because we can see that there are 3 new additions into the broken tier. These are Nico, Tryndamere, and Veigar. And Nico, just like we mentioned for the top lane, the buffs to her hitbox, the buffs to her Q, and of course her W's cooldown have seen her take off in terms of win rate, success. She has to be in the top tier. Now we also have Tryndamere here because just like top lane, you can't beat him. You cannot force this guy out of lane, and he has so much sustain, he's guaranteed to get to the mid to late game. And remember, if you're going Hullbreaker on Tryndamere, this is staying the same. So a super deadly pick in the mid lane. And then we have Veigar. Even though Veigar has been nerfed recently, does this really matter? Because the Q buff a few patches ago accelerates your scaling, and for a champion that deals so much damage in the late game, this just happens earlier. So he has to be in consideration for one of the most broken mid laners in 12.5 as well. But alongside these champions in the broken tier is Ahri. And Riot are actually targeting Ahri because she's so busted right now. Since the massive update to Ahri hit the Rift, she's really taken off. So Riot are targeting her mana cost in her W and in her E. So these are going to cost a bit more mana. And they're also targeting your W's base damage. Now your W, you are going to be maxing this second. And in the laning phase, it's a very useful tool to poke the enemy champion because it prioritizes the enemy champion. So it's pretty obnoxious to play against and helps out a lot of people who are new to Ahri because you just press W and it does the work for you. So these nerfs are probably warranted. But the champion is still just so absurdly busted. The ultimate resets, you get pretty much every ability apart from your W now, dealing more damage, the sustain. It's too much, especially when you pair this with Everfrost. You're guaranteed to land your spells, and this is why Ahri is in the broken tier. Now elsewhere in this tier list, we have a couple of interesting additions because we have Seraphine and Karma in the underrated category. And the reason that Karma is here is because, well, she's really taken off recently. And this is because this champion not only actually does well in lane because she's hard to poke out of it, but she also does a little bit of damage herself and brings utility to her teammates. And let's be honest, guys, in solo queue, think about the champions that get picked the most. They're assassins, they're high damage dealers. Having a support like mid laner in the mid lane, and this is why LS was having success in the LCS, these champions boost them. They can support their AD carry, their jungle Kha'Zix, their jungle Rengar, whoever the big damage dealer is on your team, you can protect them while still being a bit of a force yourself in the 1v1. So this is why Karma and Seraphine are here, but just to touch on Seraphine, she is getting some big buffs in 12.5, and this is the reason she's in the underrated category. So your W's mana cost, it's costing 40 less mana at rank 5, and the cooldown is also going down at later ranks as well. This means that this ability is probably going to be maxed first, or maybe you put 3 points in Q and then max your W, but that's not all, because your shield, it's going to be a little bit better in the early game, but allies are now granted this same shield value rather than 2/3 of Seraphine's value. So this is another really big buff, and the actual heal from your W as well, the actual base heal, so the percentage of the missing health per ally, this is also increasing per level, but the scaling per 100 AP is down. But the question is, are you actually accessing this 100 AP in most games? Probably not. So this nerf to the AP ratio probably doesn't matter, but the fact that the base percentage is higher, this is definitely good. And on top of all of these W changes, Seraphine's E cooldown is also down by 2 seconds, so these changes are going to see Seraphine picked a lot more in the mid lane, this is why she's here, and in the support role, which we'll get into very soon. Now the rest of the tier list, guys, is pretty self-explanatory. There aren't that many massive changes here and updates, but just at the bottom you can see the Cloud9 management tier list. We have JIZZ, Ivern, and Soraka. Now Ivern and Soraka are there, even though they can boost their allies, they don't really have that much dueling potential in the mid lane, and in a solo queue environment, they are easily exploitable. Now JIZZ is also there. I mean, you can play JIZZ in the mid lane, but it's very matchup dependent, and you're much better off just picking him in the top lane, where he pretty much has no weaknesses, and you have a much better chance of snowballing. Now let's head into the jungle, guys, and remember, to boost your skills on these champions or any of these roles, the GameLeap website is waiting for you in the description and comment section. Now the broken champions for these, we've got Fiddlesticks, Hecarim, Kha'Zix, and Rek'Sai, and to be honest, we should be able to work these out. None of these are getting nerfed, and in solo queue, they're just too damn broken. Their win rates are extremely high, they deal damage, they're hard to kill, and they're also very snowbally champions. So if you get 1 kill in the early game, you can turn this into 10 kills very quickly, and just 1v9 game. But we do have a couple of champions in this tier list who are getting targeted by 200 years of experience. So the first of these is Master Yi, and there are a lot of changes coming in. So basically, what you see on your screens now, what Riot are trying to do is take you away from the lethality build with Duskblade, Collector, and what else, which terrorizes lower elos, and move you more into the crit on hit build with Kraken Slayer, Ginsu's Wit's End, these type of items. But not only that, because Master Yi is also getting some quality of life buffs, I guess, because your E and your ultimate, you can now cast this while you're queuing, which is a very nice change. And to be honest, I could well put Master Yi into the broken tier, but just to be safe, because we don't really know how impactful these changes are going to be, he remains in S tier, and that's just like another champion who's getting nerfed in 12.5, this being Xin Zhao. So your E's cooldown is up a second. second, and your ultimate's duration, this is down to 4 seconds and not 5 seconds anymore. But to be honest, Senzel with Gore Drinker, Death Stance, more Malmortius, like let's be real. Do we really think a second cooldown in your E is going to have a big impact? Probably not, right? This champion is still one of the most versatile junglers in the entire game. He brings so much to a team composition, so just like Master Yi, he's going to stay in the S tier. But earlier in the top lane tier list, we talked about a champion who went down from S tier into the A tier category. And for Gwen in the jungle, it's the same story. So not only do you have to deal with the bonus attack range nerf, but you also have to deal with a nerf to your passive's monster max damage. The AP ratio here is down, which means it's going to be a little harder to clear camps, so it's going to slow down your clear speed, because this is where Gwen really shines, and because the attack range is down, which is where you shine as well, these are just going to be less winnable, so Gwen drops down to the B tier. Now the rest of the tier list, not much has really changed, but you can see Volibear and Underrated, which we will elaborate on in a couple of days time. He's getting picked a heck of a lot more in higher reload and in pro play, and we will reveal why in the near future. But as always, any questions or thoughts on the tier list, guys, please leave in the comment section and we will give you a more specific answer. Now we have 2 roles left: the AD carry role and the support roles for the bot lane. So let's start with the AD carries. And in terms of being broken, Jhin, Jinx, and Vayne, nothing is changing for these 3 AD carries, so they fill the broken positions. Now below these, we have Draven, Kog'Maw, Twitch, Yasuo, and Zeri. And I'm sorry for including Yasuo, but let's be honest, in the AD carry role, he actually has a better chance of winning than in mid lane or in top lane, really because AD carries get cucked a lot by his wind wall because they block their auto attack. So Yasuo has a very good chance of dominating this bot lane. As long as you get to level 2 first, you can really pop off. Now if we move to the next tier, Underrated, we have Samira here. Now why is that? Well, that's of course because of the buffs coming in for Samira for 12.5. This is going to make her a much more all-around champion because her defense is getting buffed, and she's also getting some offensive power in the ultimate cooldown department. But it's probably worth noting, just make sure you're picking Samira when your team, and especially your support, has a knock-up so you can benefit from this in your passive. But another AD carry who's going to be low-key broken in 12.5 is Xayah. Because of the buff to your E's crit in last patch, Xayah has seen a shift away from the lethality build into a Gale Force crit attack speed setup. This has actually seen her win rates improve across the board, but not enough people are playing her still. This champion in solo queue, I know her ultimate's cooldown is very long, but she does very well in solo queue just because lots of champions, like I said for Karma and Seraphine in the mid lane, are going to be dive, one-shotty champions, and Xayah, because of her ultimate, does very well into these. She loves champions who get close to her because then your E is going to deal a serious amount of damage, so she comes in the underrated tier. Now apart from that, the rest of this tier list really hasn't changed much, but you can see right at the bottom, please don't pick Senna as an AD carry. You're much better off picking her as a support, as you can see in the support tier list. Senna is one of 4 of the most broken champions in this role for 12.5, and alongside Senna we have Blitzcrank, Renata Glass, and also Janna. These 3 champions are popping off right now because, well, they're just broken. Nothing is changing in 12.5 for these champions. They're still going to have some of the highest win rates, so to give yourselves the best chance of winning from the support position, make sure you lock in these champions. Now we also have a new addition to the S tier, this being Tahm Kench. This champion has become a lot more popular, especially in higher reloads and in pro player at the moment, because of the changes that just made him better in the support role, because the grey health from your thick skin is really activating when there are 2 enemy champions nearby, so in other words, the enemy AD carry and the support. Also the Q slow, which is 50%, can be very impactful because your AD carry can capitalize on this. It's not just Tahm Kench, and just like Xayah, Tahm Kench loves champions who jump in there because he can peel his AD carry. In solo queue, because this happens in pretty much every game, you are always going to have value, so Tahm Kench appears in the S tier for 12.5, and apart from that, guys, not much is really changing. Seraphine, because of the buff, is moving up to underrated, and we'll get into the other champions and explain why they're here in a future video, of course, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you do not miss out on the underrated low-key champions countdown. So those were the tier lists for 12.5. Please let us know if you want us to continue making these tier lists. Smash that like button down below, and until tomorrow's daily Season 12 upload, this has been the JIZZ. Bye!